It was a calm morning in Sydney, Australia on March 11, 2024. The LATAM Airlines Flight LA800 was preparing to depart for Santiago, Chile, with a scheduled stopover in Auckland, New Zealand. Aboard the Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner, registration CCBGG, were 272 people, 263 passengers and 9 crew members. The plane took off on schedule at 11:44 a.m. local time, climbing steadily toward its cruising altitude of 41,000 feet. For the first 2 hours, the flight seemed ordinary. Passengers settled into their seats, some reading, some dozing, others peering out the windows at the endless expanse of ocean below. Flight attendants moved through the cabin, performing routine checks and offering drinks and snacks. The hum of the engines and the occasional clatter of trays provided a strange sense of security. A normal day at 41,000 feet. Then, without warning, the plane lurched violently. A sudden sharp drop in altitude threw passengers against the ceiling and seats. Objects that had not been secured, laptops, water bottles, and even a few hand luggage items, were sent flying through the cabin. Screams filled the air, blending with the mechanical roar of the aircraft struggling to stabilize. Passengers gripped their armrests, some crying, some praying, as the plane's descent seemed to last an eternity, though in reality only seconds had passed. The crew acted immediately, securing themselves and instructing passengers to fasten seatbelts. Oxygen masks deployed automatically above every row, a lifeline in the chaos. The cockpit crew, fully trained for emergencies, struggled with the controls, diagnosing a sudden, unexplained loss of cabin pressure and turbulence unlike anything recorded in the plane's systems. Communications with air traffic control were swift but tense, the controllers' calm voices a stark contrast to the panic inside the cabin. As the aircraft fought to regain stability, passengers clung to their seats, some holding hands with strangers, some whispering frantic goodbyes. The terror was real, immediate, and unrelenting. For those aboard, the reality of flying, something so routine for millions daily, had transformed into a battle for survival. A stark reminder of the thin line between safety and catastrophe in the skies. The minutes after the sudden drop felt endless. Inside the cabin of Flight LA800, panic had taken root. Screams and shouts mingled with the constant alarms of the aircraft's systems. Flight attendants, trained for emergencies yet still human, moved with precision through the chaos, strapping themselves to secure points and helping passengers fasten seatbelts while trying to calm trembling voices. The sense of normalcy that had accompanied the takeoff was gone, replaced by an overwhelming awareness that something was dangerously wrong. Above the commotion, the cockpit crew fought to regain control. Captain Rodrigo Vidal and First Officer Mariana Rojas had over 15,000 flight hours between them. Yet the sudden loss of altitude and erratic readings from multiple sensors created a scenario that required immediate action. The aircraft had experienced a rare but serious aerodynamic issue at 41,000 feet, conditions that pushed both the machine and its pilots to the limits. They initiated emergency procedures, carefully reducing speed and adjusting pitch to stabilize the plane while communicating with air traffic control over the South Pacific. Every command was precise, each decision crucial, as lives depended on their expertise and composure. Meanwhile, passengers experienced the terrifying effects of the altitude loss firsthand. Some clutched their children, others gripped their neighbors' hands. Oxygen masks dangled above, prompting a collective struggle to fit them properly in the fear and confusion. The plane had dropped nearly 5,000 feet in seconds, an abrupt and violent reminder of how fragile human control can feel at such heights. Heartbeats raced. Some passengers began murmuring prayers while others simply closed their eyes, willing the nightmare to end. Even in such a dire situation, small acts of humanity shone through. A young woman helped an elderly man adjust his mask. A father shielded his child from flying debris. Strangers comforted each other, creating fleeting bonds forged under intense fear. These moments of courage and empathy contrasted sharply with the mechanical chaos around them, highlighting the resilience of people when confronted with life-threatening crises. As the aircraft stabilized temporarily at 36,000 feet, the crew made a crucial decision: an emergency descent to a safer altitude and diversion to Auckland Airport. Every move was calculated, every second mattered. For passengers, the ordeal had shifted from disbelief to grim determination to survive, each heartbeat echoing the fragile boundary between catastrophe and safety at 41,000 feet above the ocean. The decision to initiate an emergency descent changed everything inside the cabin. The aircraft, once gliding smoothly at 41,000 feet, now plummeted toward a safer altitude, a maneuver that subjected passengers to intense turbulence and pressure changes. The low roar of the engines was punctuated by the metallic groan of the fuselage adjusting to rapid airspeed variations. For those inside, the experience was disorienting. Stomachs lurched, oxygen masks hung like fragile lifelines, and the once controlled environment of commercial flight had vanished. Captain Rodrigo Vidal remained a pillar of calm in the cockpit. Every control input was deliberate. The first officer monitored systems, scanning instrument panels for anomalies, while adjusting flaps and engines to manage descent speed. They were in constant contact with Auckland Air Traffic Control, providing updates and requesting emergency landing clearance. The tension was palpable, but their combined experience and training were holding the situation together. Outside, the vast ocean stretched endlessly, a reminder that even minor errors at such altitudes could have catastrophic consequences. Inside the cabin, flight attendants moved like lifelines through the storm. Strapped in for safety, they instructed passengers on how to remain secure and manage their oxygen masks. They reassured frightened travelers, calming crying children, and guiding the elderly. Each instruction was repeated multiple times over the roar of the engines, a small attempt at restoring order amid chaos. Passengers alternated between fear, hope, and disbelief, sharing whispered prayers or gripping hands with strangers as the aircraft shook violently. The sudden descent highlighted the fragility of life at 36,000 feet. Seatbelts cut into hips and shoulders as the plane jolted, but they were the thin thread between passengers and serious injury. Drinks, utensils, and personal items that hadn't been secured became airborne hazards. Some passengers instinctively clutched these objects while others ducked under seats seeking cover. Fear was universal. Panic, however, was tempered by the professionalism and authority of the crew, who had trained countless times for scenarios like this, yet never truly prepared for the visceral terror of it in real life. Amid the panic, the first real glimmer of hope appeared. The plane had stabilized enough for emergency descent to continue safely, and Auckland Airport was prepared to receive them. Flight attendants relayed instructions calmly. Stay seated, fasten belts, remain calm. In the cockpit, Captain Vidal adjusted the descent angle, carefully balancing speed and altitude while monitoring cabin pressure, a critical factor given the sudden drop from cruising height. Every second felt like an eternity, but the combination of human skill, training, and instinct was preventing tragedy. For the passengers, the ordeal became a harsh test of endurance, patience, and courage. Every jolt and alarm reminded them of the razor-thin margin between disaster and survival, a lesson etched indelibly in their memory even before the plane touched ground. As Flight LA800 descended toward Auckland Airport, a tense anticipation gripped both passengers and crew. The city lay hundreds of miles ahead, a distant promise of safety after the sudden chaos at 41,000 feet. Inside the cabin, the oxygen masks had been removed, but the adrenaline still coursed through every passenger's body. Heartbeats remained rapid, hands trembled from the stress and the violent jolts of the earlier turbulence. Many were silent, processing what had just occurred, while others whispered reassurances or prayers. Captain Rodrigo Vidal and First Officer Mariana Rojas now focused entirely on approach procedures. The plane had stabilized at a lower cruising altitude, but the descent had been aggressive enough to stress both aircraft and passengers. Every system was monitored meticulously: hydraulic pressures, engine performance, cabin pressure, and flight control surfaces. The flight crew maintained constant communication with Auckland Air Traffic Control, providing precise coordinates and descent speed, requesting priority clearance for an emergency landing. The calm professionalism in the cockpit contrasted sharply with the fear gripping the cabin, a silent reminder of the skill required to manage a crisis at 36,000 feet. Flight attendants moved among passengers, checking that seatbelts were fastened and that everyone was prepared for landing. Strapped in at secure points, they became the lifeline of reassurance, offering small gestures of comfort amid lingering fear. Passengers clutched armrests, gripped hands of nearby strangers, or prayed quietly. Some replayed the violent drop in their minds, unable to shake the sudden realization of mortality in an environment where control is almost entirely in the hands of a few trained professionals. Outside, the vast Pacific Ocean reflected the afternoon sun, its calm a stark contrast to the storm of human emotion inside the aircraft. The flight path toward Auckland had been carefully coordinated to avoid severe weather and allow for a smooth approach. The aircraft systems were fully operational, but vigilance remained paramount. Any error now, even a minor one, could have dire consequences. The pilots adjusted flaps and engines with precision, communicating each move to ensure safety during the critical final stages of flight. For the passengers, the approach was a mixture of hope and anxiety. Each bump of turbulence was a reminder of how fragile the situation had been. Small acts of humanity persisted. A woman comforted a crying child, a man whispered encouragement to his neighbor, and flight attendants continued their calm, steady guidance. The realization that safety was near began to filter through, though fear remained. A powerful reminder of how quickly normalcy can be shattered in the skies. As the runway lights of Auckland Airport appeared in the distance, a collective tension gripped everyone. The ordeal was far from over, but the glimmer of hope grew stronger with each passing second. The lights of Auckland Airport grew steadily brighter through the cockpit windows, each one a beacon of hope for the passengers and crew of Flight LA800. Inside, tension remained palpable. After the violent drop from 41,000 feet and the turbulent emergency descent, everyone on board had been pushed to the limits, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now the final challenge loomed. A safe landing on unfamiliar tarmac under emergency conditions. Captain Rodrigo Vidal adjusted the plane's alignment carefully, checking wind speed, runway length, and the aircraft's flaps and landing gear. First Officer Mariana Rojas monitored instruments meticulously, calling out readings and confirming each adjustment. Every movement of the yoke, throttle, and rudder had to be precise. Even a minor miscalculation could compromise the aircraft's fragile stability after the earlier stresses. The Boeing 787 responded, but the crew knew they were operating at the edge of the plane's safe performance envelope. In the cabin, passengers clutched armrests as the plane descended over the airport perimeter. Flight attendants reinforced safety instructions, ensuring seatbelts were tied and tray tables stowed. Some passengers gripped their neighbors' hands, others closed their eyes, whispering hurried prayers. Children clung to their parents, frightened by the turbulence and the sheer proximity to danger. The collective fear was thick, almost tangible, but it was tempered by trust in the professionalism of the crew guiding the aircraft. The runway came closer, and the plane began its final approach. The airport emergency teams had been notified and were ready, though the pilot's skill and precision made the difference. The landing gear extended smoothly, flaps fully deployed, and the Boeing 787 settled into a controlled descent. There were bumps and vibrations as the plane's tires met the tarmac, but the craft remained stable. A collective exhale seemed to ripple through the cabin as the aircraft touched down safely, wheels gripping the runway and brakes engaging under precise control. Flight attendants immediately moved to reassure passengers, though most remained silent, absorbing the shock of survival. Some cried openly, overwhelmed by the intensity of the past hour. Others simply stared, unable to process the sudden return to safety. Captain Vidal and First Officer Rojas taxied the plane to the gate, maintaining calm in the cockpit while coordinating with ground crews who had prepared for this emergency. For the first time in nearly 2 hours, there was a sense of relief. The nightmare of the sudden drop from 41,000 feet had ended without catastrophe. Passengers slowly unbuckled, assisting one another and thanking the crew who had guided them through the ordeal. Despite the trauma, gratitude and awe filled the air, a testament to human resilience and the rigorous training of those tasked with safeguarding lives at extreme altitudes. The wheels of Flight LA800 had barely come to a full stop at Auckland Airport when the crew sprang into action. Despite the relief that came with a safe landing, the emergency procedures were far from over. Flight attendants quickly moved down the aisles, instructing passengers to remain seated until the plane was fully secured, then guiding them toward the exits in an orderly manner. Calm authority was essential. After such a terrifying experience, panic could erupt even on solid ground. Emergency vehicles were already lined up along the runway, their flashing lights casting stark reflections on the tarmac. Firefighters, paramedics, and airport security personnel had been on high alert since the descent was first reported. The coordination was precise. Stretchers were ready, ambulances stationed nearby, and first responders positioned to assist anyone suffering injuries or shock. Communication between the cockpit, cabin crew, and ground control ensured that no detail was overlooked, a seamless orchestration born of rigorous training and preparedness. Passengers evacuated in small groups, many still pale and shaking from the ordeal. Some clung to loved ones, while others walked silently, dazed by the rapid sequence of events they had just survived. Flight attendants continued to provide reassurance, checking on individuals who appeared disoriented or injured, and prioritizing children and the elderly. The crew's calm, professional demeanor was a lifeline for everyone on board, a reminder that even after a terrifying emergency, structured support could guide them safely to normalcy. Media and airport staff began documenting the event immediately. Screens and cameras captured images of emergency vehicles lined along the runway, while news outlets quickly circulated updates about the incident. Passengers were interviewed cautiously, many too shaken to speak, but their accounts of the sudden altitude drop and the skilled handling by the pilots quickly highlighted the human element of the crisis: courage, quick thinking, and resilience. Paramedics conducted preliminary assessments for anyone with physical injuries. Most were minor, bruises, scrapes, or dislocated joints from the turbulence. but the psychological impact was profound. Passengers were guided to the terminal for rest, hydration, and counseling if necessary. Airport's crisis response teams coordinated with the airline to ensure that every detail was addressed. Luggage retrieval, passenger assistance, and transportation arrangements for those continuing their journeys. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the reality of survival settled over everyone involved. Flight LA800 had experienced a terrifying drop from 41,000 feet, yet every life on board had been preserved. The incident would be studied for months to come, both for the technical lessons and the human stories of courage under extreme pressure. Amid the chaos and fear, the grounding of the plane marked a profound moment of relief, reflection, and gratitude. The investigation into the sudden altitude loss aboard LATAM Airlines Flight LA800 was swift and thorough. Authorities from both Chile and New Zealand, including the Dirección General de Aeronáutica Civil, DGAC, and the Transport Accident Investigation Commission, TAC, immediately began examining the aircraft's systems, flight data recorders, and cockpit voice recorders. Their goal was to determine the root cause of the in-flight upset that had injured 50 people. Preliminary findings indicated that the aircraft had experienced a technical event that led to a sudden and unexpected loss of altitude. Passengers had described the incident as feeling like an earthquake, with many being thrown from their seats and some even hitting the ceiling. The aircraft's systems had momentarily malfunctioned, leading to the loss of control. Further investigation revealed that a cockpit seat switch had been inadvertently activated by a flight attendant during meal service. This activation caused the pilot's seat to move forward, pushing the pilot into the controls and inadvertently directing the aircraft's nose downward. This unintended movement resulted in a rapid descent, catching both the crew and passengers off guard. In response to the incident, Boeing issued a safety advisory to all 787 operators, urging them to inspect cockpit seat switches for any potential malfunctions. The advisory emphasized the importance of ensuring that seat switch covers were properly secured and that switches were not inadvertently activated during flight. The investigation also highlighted the importance of crew training and cockpit ergonomics. While the seat's movement was unintended, it underscored the need for design considerations that prevent such occurrences. The incident led to discussions within the aviation community about potential design modifications to enhance safety and prevent similar events in the future. As the investigation concluded, the findings were shared with aviation authorities worldwide. The lessons learned from the LATAM Airlines Flight LA800 incident contributed to a broader understanding of cockpit safety and led to recommendations for improved training and equipment design to prevent similar occurrences. The aftermath of Flight LA800 rippled far beyond Auckland Airport. While the immediate crisis had ended safely, the aviation community quickly turned its attention to the larger implications of the incident. Airlines, regulatory authorities, and aircraft manufacturers began reviewing policies, procedures, and designs to ensure such an event would not happen again. One of the most significant takeaways was the importance of cockpit ergonomics and human factors. The inadvertent activation of a pilot's seat switch, which triggered the rapid descent, was a stark reminder that even small design flaws could have potentially catastrophic consequences. Boeing and other manufacturers began revising guidelines for cockpit layouts, ensuring switches and controls were better protected from accidental activation. Flight crews received updated training modules focused on unusual attitude recovery, cockpit awareness, and rapid decision-making under stress. Airlines worldwide were reminded of the importance of rigorous in-flight safety protocols. Flight attendants underwent refresher courses emphasizing the risks of movement in the cockpit area during critical flight phases. Airlines introduced stricter regulations around crew positioning, especially during meal services or other activities that could inadvertently interfere with cockpit equipment. For passengers, the incident became an unexpected case study in human resilience and preparedness. Emergency briefings and safety demonstrations, often overlooked, had proven vital in preventing injuries during the sudden turbulence and rapid descent. Passenger behavior during emergencies, securing seatbelts, following crew instructions, and remaining calm highlighted the real-world importance of safety procedures routinely communicated before takeoff. Psychological support also became a focus. Many passengers reported lingering anxiety after the flight, highlighting the emotional impact of sudden in-flight emergencies. Airlines collaborated with mental health professionals to provide counseling and guidance for affected passengers and crew, emphasizing that safety extends beyond physical well-being. The event also garnered widespread media attention, prompting public discussions about aviation safety. Experts appeared on news programs, explaining the technical and human factors behind the incident and reassuring the public about the overall safety of commercial air travel. While the dramatic drop from 41,000 feet had captured global attention, The constructive response by aviation authorities reinforced confidence in the industry's commitment to continuous improvement. Ultimately, Flight LA800 became a benchmark case for safety reform. Its lessons, technical, procedural, and psychological, reshaped training, cockpit design, and passenger awareness, ensuring that the terrifying experience of one flight could prevent similar crises in the future. In the days following the incident, the world's attention turned to the human stories of Flight LA800. Passengers shared vivid recollections of the terrifying moments at 41,000 feet and the skilled responses that had ensured their survival. These first-hand accounts highlighted both fear and gratitude, capturing the emotional intensity of an event that could have ended in tragedy. One young mother described clinging to her infant as the plane dropped, the oxygen mask dangling just above her head. "I didn't know if we would make it," she recounted, her voice still trembling. "But the flight attendants kept me calm, telling me to hold on and breathe. I owe them everything." Another passenger, a business traveler, spoke about the split-second decisions made by the pilots. "I realized how much training and focus go into keeping us safe. Every action mattered. They saved our lives." Crew members also shared their reflections. Flight attendants emphasized the importance of remaining composed and methodical. "Panic is contagious," one senior attendant explained. "We knew that if we showed fear, the passengers would feel it too. Staying calm allowed everyone to follow instructions and survive without major injuries." Pilots, while professional in public statements, admitted the incident had been unnerving even for highly experienced aviators. The unexpected seat activation and sudden descent tested both technical knowledge and mental resilience, reinforcing the unpredictability of life in the cockpit. Media coverage amplified these narratives, bringing the story to international audiences. News outlets interviewed survivors, pilots, and aviation experts, highlighting not only the technical cause but also the human bravery displayed during the crisis. Footage of emergency responders on the Auckland tarmac and the relieved faces of passengers exiting the plane captured the world's attention. The incident became a teachable moment, emphasizing safety protocols, crew training, and the critical role of passenger cooperation during emergencies. Psychologists also weighed in, discussing the trauma passengers might experience after such an event. Fear of flying, hypervigilance, and flashbacks were common, even among those who had emerged physically unharmed. Airlines responded by offering counseling and support services, recognizing that survival is both physical and psychological. Flight LA800, despite its frightening descent, became a testament to human endurance, teamwork, and preparation. From terrified passengers to composed flight attendants and pilots, the flight story emphasized that in moments of extreme stress, training, professionalism, and empathy make the difference between disaster and survival. In the months following the incident, Flight LA800 became more than just a headline. It became a symbol of vigilance, training, and human resilience in aviation. Investigators, pilots, and airlines meticulously reviewed every detail of the flight, ensuring that lessons learned would translate into lasting safety improvements. The Boeing 787 underwent extensive inspections, and adjustments were made to cockpit controls and ergonomic safeguards to prevent accidental activations. For the aviation industry, the incident reinforced the importance of continuous improvement. Airlines updated training programs for both flight crews and cabin staff, incorporating scenarios that mirrored the unique challenges experienced on that fateful flight. Emergency protocols were refined, emphasizing communication, teamwork, and the psychological well-being of passengers during high-stress events. Aviation regulators around the world issued guidance to ensure that lessons from LA800 could prevent similar occurrences globally. Passengers, while initially traumatized, emerged with profound respect for the skill and composure of the crew. Many reflected on the fragility of life at high altitudes and the narrow margin between routine flight and disaster. Survivors shared their stories widely, inspiring documentaries, interviews, and aviation safety campaigns. Their first-hand experiences highlighted the human side of aviation safety: courage, empathy, and the critical importance of following crew instructions during emergencies. Flight attendants, too, received recognition for their professionalism under pressure. Their ability to maintain order and provide reassurance amid chaos became a case study in crisis management. Pilots, often unseen by passengers, were celebrated for their precise handling of the aircraft under extreme stress. Their split-second decisions exemplified the combination of training, experience, and calm judgment that defines aviation safety. The legacy of Flight LA800 extended beyond technical fixes and procedural updates. It reshaped public perception of air travel, emphasizing the value of preparation, human oversight, and collaboration between crew, passengers, and ground support. Aviation schools used the incident as a teaching example, demonstrating the interplay of mechanical systems, human factors, and emergency response. Years later, survivors remembered the flight not only for the fear and uncertainty, but also for the extraordinary display of skill and teamwork that ensured their survival. Flight LA800 became a reminder that in moments of crisis, preparedness, courage, and professionalism are what transform potential catastrophe into a story of survival. It was a flight that tested limits at 41,000 feet. But ultimately, it reinforced the very principles that make modern air travel remarkably safe.